Hello, good people of the internet. My name is Andy, and you're watching Geek Curio. And today I am going to be sitting down and speaking to a good friend of mine who is known as Gonders. Gonders, how are you doing, mate?
Hey Andy, I'm not too bad. You okay?
I'm good, thank you. So, thank you ever so much for appearing on the channel with me today. Um, like I say, we've known each other through the UK Hobbyist Network and also on Twitter, and
Absolutely.
I'm quite a bit of a fan of some of the artwork that you do, and wonderful miniature painting that you've done as well. So, but can you tell us how you first got into miniature painting in the first place?
All the way from the start. Yeah, like a lot of people, I guess. I started as a young lad. I think I can pretty much remember the first day that I encountered, well, not even GW products, but definitely the tabletop hobby. I was a young lad in the very end of primary school, and one of my good friends had been introduced to a game called Blood Bowl. This would be 1994ish, somewhere around there. Um, and he hadn't been able to get hold of a copy of himself, but what he'd done is he'd come up with a version of it, which was basically pen and paper and a few models. I think he'd been shown it by one of his cousins or something along those lines. And he brought this contraption, this Blood Bowl pitch, this homemade Blood Bowl pitch, into school. And I can still remember the day when there was a gang of people gathered around it, and it was a bit of a, "Ooh, what's going on over there?" sort of thing. Everybody has a story, right? As a tabletop gamer or a painter or whatever, everybody has this story.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember sort of looking at it and getting involved. And if I remember right, I'd been reading at the time. I'd been reading the Redwall books, Brian Jacks, right, the classic sort of childhood fantasy, sort of that kind of vibe. And I sort of picked it up, had a look at it, and as the cliche goes, you're hooked at that point. They've got you involved. And then it just kind of went from there. A bunch of us sort of had a good look at it, decided to get involved with it, and where my story is always different to everybody else's. It's I started picking up Warhammer Fantasy, whereas so many people seem to start with Ultramarines. I started with Skaven of all things. Everybody seems to start with
I
something power
started
armor.
with Wood Elves.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You see. Yeah, so I can remember having this discussion where the bunch of us got together and we were like, "Oh, what are you going to get? What are you going to get? What are you going to get?" And it was that thing where you kids, you don't know what you're doing, and nobody wanted to have duplicates. So I ended up getting left with Skaven because it was the only thing left that nobody had already claimed. So off I went. It wasn't even a local GW. There's a small shop in my hometown that used to sell this stuff, and bagged myself £5 worth of clan rats, which all look the same. Everybody remembers the green box, right? And then basically never looked back after that. I can remember the first GW store opening in my hometown. I can remember when we went the day that we found that in town, and my family took me to it. Oh, you'll like this and all the rest of it. And from then on, sort of never looked back. It only really kicked in properly after high school, when I never did the whole uni thing. I was an apprentice, so a lot of my friends went off to college and uni and that sort of thing from school. So I ended up having to find myself a bunch of new mates. So I was like, well, I know where I can go to do this. And then Saturday mornings in GW, and lo and behold, there you go. So that's how it all started, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's in terms of a painter, I still don't know if I describe myself as a painter or a gamer. That's always a classic question, isn't it? On the
I've only known you as a
things.
painter because obviously we've met during lockdown, and so
I was gonna say, yeah, the times in which we live. This is it, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, I consider myself both, pretty evenly both. When times are normal, of course. A lot of people, again, they go through it, they get involved in the game in high school, look at sort of college age, and then they get to college age. Uni is normally when it happens, and people just drop it, and they find something else to do. They leave wherever they came from, they go to a big city, they become students, and plastic toy soldiers get forgotten about. Right, this is a classic. And then, as has happened with my generation, and I'm 35 years old. As has happened with my generation, people seem to start coming back to it around 31, 32. Maybe a little bit younger. I never did any of that. I went straight through the whole thing. I am basically toy soldiers to the core. I never had a break. Never stopped. Maybe the occasional, not quite as interested in that at the moment, but generally I played all the way through in some form or other. So yeah, I describe it as basically a part of who I am, which is quite a big statement, but I think it's also true.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah.
can be pretty disappointed with everyone else than lack of dedication, really, couldn't you?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I understand how life is, and
Yeah.
life gets in the way and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's definitely been a major part of my life for a long, long time. So yeah, like I said, it wouldn't change it as well.
Do you still play Blood Bowl or bootleg Blood Bowl?
I do not still play Blood Bowl. There's that many games on the market at the moment, and choosing which one is the one for me, especially now that I'm all grown up and I have a child of my own and a
Hmm.
wife and family and all the rest of it. The time frame is, the available time I have in the week is shrinking as it does. So if I had time to play every game that GW made, it'd be great, and maybe I would have a go at Blood Bowl, but not something I particularly pick up, to be honest with you. There was Like I said, I've played a lot of games over the years. It's not just GW stuff as well. I've played most things that GW have played. Like I was there in the era of Necromunda coming out and all that sort of stuff, and all the way through after that, and Mordheim and Battlefleet Gothic and all of the specialist games. I've tried them all at some point, I would have thought. And then onto other companies as well. There's a boom in sort of the early 2000s where loads of little companies sprang up making all sorts of games. Tried to go a few of those. You'll recognise Confrontation and War Machine and various other, the Drop Zones, Drop Fleet Commander, all that. I've had a good go at most of them, to be entirely honest with you. I said maybe not most of them. That's quite a sweeping statement. There was a lot of that era, but yeah. So all good fun.
So you mentioned other companies as well. So as we know on Twitter, you're quite well known for doing a lot of the big GW stuff, and you've even been featured on the Warhammer community a few times as well, haven't you? But what other companies have you, or miniature companies, do you like to dabble with? I see you got, is that a Star Wars Legion in the background?
That is a bit of Star Wars Legion. That's a very recent thing. I've not really done a lot with it yet. I've got a box of it over there somewhere, which I'm halfway through playing with. But I spent a lot of time up until I mean, I have a small child. When he was born, this kind of had to get knocked on the head because of the time restrictions. But I played a lot of War Machine and competitive War Machine as well at that. I played a lot of that for a long time, and I got reasonably good at it. I understand that it's not everyone's cup of tea. I understand that there's a lot to be said in the community about narrative versus competitive wargaming, and I'm not going to get into that tonight, but I'm one of the few people who I see myself as someone who can do both of those things. So yeah, I would definitely look at Privateer Press, and then like I said, there's always Warlord. Warlord turn out some good stuff if you're interested in that specific era or comic book, as the neighbour have now branched into.
Massive into Judge Dredd, and I think they did the Judge Dredd miniature game, which
They
I've
did,
got
yeah. I've got
painted.
that over there as well somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, Fantasy Flight. You can't. I don't think you can knock the Legion models. Like I said, I've done ATST and a couple of other bits, and they're very good now. Like they're definitely. I wouldn't say they're quite caught up with GW's sort of quality, but they're definitely getting there. But I think it's just nice to look outside the GW box sometimes. Like sure, like GW are the market leaders. We know this.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Like I don't
Without
think anybody's going to really complain or really what's the word, have any grievance with that. They're just the biggest company in the world that make this stuff. But sometimes it is nice just to see how somebody else does it in a different artistic style or a different twist or whatever it be. So yeah, like I thoroughly recommend it. And there's loads of small companies as well, like really small. Like in fact, I will definitely give a shout out to Bad Squiddo as well, who I'm sure you know.
Oh
but,
yeah, Annie. Yeah, she's
Annie
fantastic.
Norman, yeah, brilliant. I met her a long time ago at some trade show or other, and we had a good chat.
Salute or something, because I know she does Salute, doesn't she?
No, I think it was a local one around here actually at some point. I've never been to Salute, maybe one day. But yeah. So yeah, like I said, I'd highly recommend it. If you are a painter as well, improve your painting a lot because it's a different style altogether, and it makes you think more. So yeah.
I like to be able to expand and pick up some other IP, like I mentioned the Judge Dredd stuff, and I've been doing the Aliens, the new board game which has just come out from Gale Force 9. So it's good fun to be working on other stuff.
I forgot what it's called. It's called something, isn't it? I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I'll be honest. I backed a Kickstarter by a company that did an AVP game, which shall remain nameless. And although the stuff did eventually arrive, by the time it actually arrived, that would be the one. That would be the one. When it eventually arrived, all drive for doing anything to do with that particular game had just gone, and it is sat over there in a cupboard. I'm going to point over there a lot tonight because most of my things are over there. But it is sat in the bottom of a cupboard over there somewhere, and never, I'll be honest, never to be painted. And it's kind of again, it's the end of that era where loads of companies turned out loads and loads of games very quickly. But yeah, like I said, I've had a good little dabble on everything pretty much. So
the AVP ones are actually very good. I did the Alien Queen.
Yeah,
I got in on when they were doing the clearance because they didn't have the license anymore when Disney took over Fox.
Yeah.
They did actually have the drop ship, and it was half price. But even at half price, it was a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. The quality of the cast is brilliant. Like I said, I backed it. I can't remember how much I put into it, but I backed it at a reasonably high level, and I have got a box of extras over there with power loaders and alien eggs and cloaked predators and stuff, and they are amazing. But just the way the Kickstarter was run, I'm not going to get into this rant, but that didn't help that game at all.
I know how you feel. There's a Kickstarter that I backed back in 2017. And I might be getting. I know the ship is just arriving in the UK this month.
Fingers crossed.
All excitement that I initially had has just evaporated.
It's gone. Yeah.
So
this is the risk with Kickstarter, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The good news is it means I've got something to show on the channel at some point, hopefully.
Excellent. Yeah.
So,
happy days.
So going back to the work that you actually do now. You're known for the odd bit of freehanding, aren't you?
Well, this is something that's come from the last sort of year or so, and it's something that I've done a few models of now, and you don't see it very often anymore. You used to see it a little bit more, and I'm certainly not top of the game. If you were to describe that kind of model, you would definitely put. There's a lot of painters that will come before me, but I've had a good go at it on a few models, and my idea, it works especially well on GW chaotic models because of this nature of chaos that they always talk about in Black Library, right? And how it's very hard to understand, and it goes off the back of the theory of when you look at something that's particularly chaotic, if you're a human, it makes you feel sick by looking at it, right? It's this thing where you see various runes and various chaotic designs and heretical things, and they're all moving around on whatever it is, and it makes your eyes go gauzy and you throw up, right? That's a classic GW thing throughout Black Library. So it kind of plays on that a little bit, and basically it means I'm going to sit there and take a model that has got a large amount of open space on it and doodle all over it, for want of a better expression. Just doodle random designs, most of which are sort of chaotic inspired because of the nature of it. So, the classic chaos sigils of Corns Lanesti and all the rest of it. Nurgle, we better mention him. And then, that sort of thing. Skulls are plenty, wings, sort of spikes, like swirly designs. Anything that basically comes to my head as I have the paintbrush in my hand will go on that model. But the idea is that you put so much freehand on it that it doesn't break up the shape, and you keep the freehand pretty much the same colour throughout. So I've seen it a lot where people freehand models like Titans and Knights and big things with big plates on, and they do almost like what's the word I'm looking for, like murals on them, and the classic one is where you take like a bit of art, like I've got a print there of a load of Titans and stuff, a Warhammer art piece. They take that piece of art and then they basically recreate it but tiny.
Yeah, I know you mean, they plan it.
Yeah.
There's
and don't get me wrong, I think it's a really impressive thing to do, but I feel that it breaks up the shape of a model by putting it in different colours. Now, this is obviously my personal preference. Everything I say tonight will be my personal preference. I'll say that much. But I think that if you have basically very small paintings on a model, it breaks the shape up, and you almost don't get the same visual. Well, you don't get the same visual. You get a different effect. So I'm not a huge fan of it. I'll be honest with you, doing it that way. But I find that keeping it all in the same spectrum, it makes people pick it up and they go, and then they really look at it. They get really close to it and go, and it it's a point of interest that's not immediately obvious, and that's what's weird about it. When you see a picture of it on Twitter or whatever, it's right in your face because we're living in this age where everyone's looking at their models from 3 inches away now because that's where you take your photos from, and everyone's looking at everything in hyper detail. When you get one of those on the table, it's not immediately obvious, and this is what I like about it. So if you have a Land Raider that's free-handed in roughly the same color, you could just walk past it unless someone walks past it, goes, "Ooh, let's have a," and then they really lean in and they go, "Oh, actually, that looks totally different." So, like, I wouldn't say it's my style, but it's definitely something I like doing a lot that I don't see a lot anywhere else.
Yeah, it's
so
the way that you do it. You do it your way.
Yeah, that's it. That's what the whole hobby is about for me. Like, it's a classic now, but there is no wrong way of doing it, is there? And I'm a thorough believer in that. Despite what I may say later in the interview. I am like, it is your hobby. You do exactly how you want to do it, and we're all here to enjoy it. And at the end of the day, it's a luxury thing that we can enjoy together. So,
absolutely,
I'm not going to tell anyone how to do it or not to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about getting models from different companies. I normally ask people what sort of paint do you use and all that. Do you normally stick with the Citadel brand, or do you tend to pick and choose?
I am not loyal to anyone when it comes to basically any product I will buy for this hobby. I will pick what I think is the best for the job at the time. I do use a lot of Scale 75 paints at the moment, but the reason I do that is because I'm lazy, and Scale 75 paints come in brilliantly organised paint sets. They're about 30 quid a shot, and you get 8 paints. You get 8 paints in each one. I'm looking at a lot of them there. And they are all very well colour matched in a spectrum. And I'm lazy, and I like that because you can take that and you can almost reliably paint a model with those paints only, possibly adding black and white, and you will get something that looks coherent and it looks very good. So I'm a fan of them for that reason, which is not something that's a real reason, because you could do that with any set of paint, right? You could figure out the spectrum yourself. But just because they happen to come in a nice little packet where I know this is going to work, it seems to work well for me. So yeah, Scale 75 I use Vallejo. I use all most of the ones that people have heard of. I do use Citadel. There's no problem with Citadel at all. Some people think there is, but there's not. Like I said, Vallejo I use. Army Painter. Army Painter washes have been a secret weapon of mine for a while. Again, I bought just a set of Army Painter washes, and in fact, let's have this rant now. Let's do it.
What rant?
this rant, the one that's coming.
Oh, okay.
I bought a set of Army Painter washes, and this is what kicked this off. Right, I'll keep it brief. I will. It's a set of 12 different coloured, what Citadel would call shades. Right, they're just various coloured washes or shades, or however you want to call it. And in buying a set of them, it opened my eyes to the fact that there's a whole spectrum of washes you can buy. And obviously, it's the same with GW, it's the same with any sort of manufacturer. But what it made me do is it made me look at the different colours in that set, and I'm talking like primary colours. You're talking like yellows and reds and blues and all the rest of it. And I looked at it and went, "What's the application for that?" And once I got that into that mindset, I realised that, and this is going to sound arty and a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Try not to swear. Trying to think about the best way of putting it. A little bit arrogant, maybe, but it's not how I intend it to come across at all. But it's then I realised that not everything needs to be shaded in black or brown, right? So this is where I'm going with this, because shadows aren't black or brown, right? If you're actually going for what some people would call a display piece or a competition piece or something that you would refer to as a piece as opposed to a model, then then you have to look at the colour of your shadows and your colour of your highlights in a bit more detail than you would if it was just something on a tabletop. And that's how I sort of figure this out. And for me, personally, shading a model in anything other than black or brown makes it kick and makes it a lot more of an interesting paint job. There is some people who will watch this who will know that I apparently have a hatred of Null Oil and Agrax Earthshade. It's not hatred. It's just that's where it came from. So yeah, like I said, Army Painter, the secret weapon. Go and get yourself a box of Army Painter washes. You can't knock them.
Do you know Gorilla with a Brush?
I know of him. I think I follow him on Twitter, but I
Yeah,
don't know a lot about him.
I've attended a couple of his art classes, and he actually picked up on that in exactly. So
Hmm.
that's something that well, I shouldn't go around saying that's something he teaches because he does actually do art classes. But oddly enough,
Yeah, yeah.
since I've been attending his art classes, I've not touched Null Noil and Agrek
Mm.
Surfshade. So I'm actually on your side with this one.
You got
So
cold turkey. See, a lot of people say this to me. They can say, "Oh, I'm actually on your side," and they always use the word "actually." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! What do you mean actually?" um, but yeah, and the thing is, it's where is your line, right? Because some people, and I 100% understand this because I am like this as well. Some people just want to get 3,000 points of something on the board. You don't have to be judging it to any sort of standard. Well, no, you'd have to be judging it to a standard, but you don't have to be judging it to competition standard, and you don't have to be trying to pull off the very best thing you can. Some people just want to churn through a lot of troops and get it done. And trust me, I've been there and done it. I am one of those people. If I've got an army and a tournament to go to, I will blast through that. And that's where systems like Irex and Nuln are good.
mhm.
And it's the same with contrast paints. Contrast paints will have been a godsend to anybody who wants to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And like I said, there's no problem with it. Like you said, that is something that loads of people are happy to do, and they should be happy to do, and I would be happy to do. Where I get a problem is when people start shouting down people for the right and wrong way of doing it. No, no. Like as long as you're doing it and you're happy and you've got the best tool for the best job, go
yeah.
for it.
I find myself using the shades now for. I've discovered this a while back, but it's Rakar Flesh is called my
Mm.
magic paint because I basically use that and any one of the Citadel shades, and I can make all sorts of different stuff. I can make
Yeah,
human stretched leg leather, elf flesh.
yeah. Sometimes you just find a paint that is just nice for what seemingly everything.
It's the best paint in the world in my opinion, and I've literally
Mm.
recommended it to so many people. Just rack off flesh and a shade, and you can make so much. It just seems to be
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that magic spectrum. So
yeah. See, GW have got this thing at the moment where, and this is again no detriment, and it will be to aid those people. I think it will be to aid those people who want to get things on the table pretty quick. But they have this thing where their paint system is almost it's almost regimented in. If you want to paint black, for example, you use Abaddon black, then you use Thunderhawk turquoise. I'll be honest, I don't know names very well. Then you use Thunderhawk grey, then you use Fenrisian grey, or whatever it be. And it seems to be because it's on the app. There's an app for this now, isn't there?
yeah, I
An
use.
app for everything in 2021. Um, yeah, so it's very regimented, and to me that just it like again it's a tool for a job, but if you're trying to get what I would call a more interesting paint job, twisting that and because mixing paint isn't a thing they really promote anymore, which is a weird one.
No,
Um,
I find it's very much a painting by numbers thing, and I think
mm,
I think with GW it's trying to make the easiest possible way to get people into painting, and
well, yeah,
yeah,
that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I guess if you look at like you will have been there back in the 90s, 2000s, when you look at those painting guides, it's a classic almost meme now, isn't it? Where everything's base coated, and then by the third stage, it's heavy metal standard, and you go, hang on a minute, what? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I understand that. It
I thought it
is
was a
obviously.
hairspray they put on at the end to protect it.
Yeah, I'll have to get me some of that magic spray. Um, yeah, but like I said, it's all about getting the right tool for the right job and what you want out of your hobby. And like, I don't ever want to come across as one of those people who's like, this is the right way of doing it, this is the wrong way of doing it, this is how I think should be done, and therefore everybody else has to follow me. Like, I just don't get behind that at all.
The wonderful thing about being able to interview painters like yourself and Gorilla with a Brush and all that is I get to hear all these different perspectives, so to
Mm,
speak. And there's so much more I wanna learn. I mean, I've been working on I've got a Space Wolf bust,
mm.
which isn't an official space. It's basically a
No, no,
Space
it'll be
Viking bust,
a space Viking, yeah.
Viking Marines.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I was terrified about doing it. And then when I did the class with Gorilla, I did enough. What I did in the class was amazing. Well, to me, it was amazing because it's something
Hmm.
I'd never done before. And then I was trying to apply that, and then I've hit another wall. So I might need to. I've been
Yeah.
trying to get another class off him.
Yeah. It's funny you should mention bust painting actually, because bust painting is something that I've picked up in the last year during lockdown. Once I sort of cleared the backlog and I realised that it wasn't going to be any games recently, I then sort of turned my painting over from painting things to get on the table when lockdown is over into painting things to not get on the table, just to paint.
Hmm.
And if you switch that mindset, then everything becomes a lot more, to my mind, interesting.
Hmm. Yes.
Um, and some of the things one thing I wanted to do was pick up bust painting, um, because I'd never done it before, and this is something it's still very, very new to me. I think I've now done half a dozen. Yeah, I think I've done half a dozen busts, or maybe 5. Um, and everything that maybe not everything, but a lot of the things that you learn painting in 28mm scale go straight out the window when you pick up something that is bigger, because all of a sudden your shades just don't work anymore.
Yeah.
The surfaces are too big, and you have to learn to, I guess, paint in those shadows and paint in the
Yes. Yeah.
contrasts, and your blends have to be more on point, and things change, and it's a hell of a learning experience. And one of the many things I like about this hobby is that you are always learning, right?
Hmm.
Like the amount of, I mean, I'm no professional painter or no golden demon winner or anything like that, but the amount of time that I've spent sat in front of YouTube watching various channels to learn techniques, and I've been at it for 20 years, and you're still learning things. But bust painting was one last year that well, first of all, I really clicked with it. It surprised me how much I clicked with it. But then it really taught me a lot. In the last over lockdown, I've probably learned more about painting than in the last like 8 years, because you get stuck in that. This is how I do it. This is how I do it. You just turn it out for fun,
Yeah. You're
and
churning
then
it out.
suddenly, yeah. Then when you flip the table a little bit, and you go, okay, let's try something totally different, and you change your mindset into, I'm ready to learn this now. Your painting goes up and up and up and up. I think it does anyway.
No, I agree. It's one hell of a challenge, but it's so satisfying when you get something
Mm.
right on a bust because, like I say, you can always with 28mm you could always kind of like hide it. It's like eyes, yeah, black dot, and
Yeah,
then you know
yeah, yeah.
it's more of a shadow on the eyes or more than anything.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just being taught techniques and learning new techniques is fantastic. I've
Yeah.
learned a lot as well. I probably don't do as much as I because I spend more time learning than I do doing, unfortunately. So
Mm. I think a lot of people do though.
yeah,
That is unfortunately part of it. But then I guess it depends how you learn. I'm not no psychologist, but I'm probably best at learning by doing.
yeah,
So if someone puts something that I've never painted before in a larger scale that's a totally different kettle of fish, then I will probably learn more doing that than watching somebody else do it.
yeah.
Um,
My problem is I know how to do a bust. It's just actually
mm,
getting it down and painting it there and then,
yeah,
and actually doing it because sometimes what you know is in your head doesn't come out the way it
mm,
does on a.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, this is it. What's strange about it is I clicked. The first one I did was a bust called Rosie, and it's roughly based on Rosie the Riveter, who is, I don't know if you know who Rosie the Riveter is.
yes, from
She,
the
yeah, she was like she was an American icon in the World War, wasn't she? And it was about the women on the home front bolting together thunderbolts and mustangs and stuff. Um, and it was a bust roughly based on her. I cannot remember what company it was. It might be FER Miniatures. Anyway, and that was the first one I picked up, and I took the picture of it at the end of it, and it genuinely surprised me how happy I was with it. And I've not had that from a paint job in a long time. I looked at it and I was like, that is arguably the scariest, like, realistic paint job I've ever done.
Mhm.
And it's not winning any competitions, but I looked at it and I was like, actually, that's the first time in a long time I've been genuinely proud of something that I painted. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's all good.
I've got a head of a guy who's got a tattoo on the side of his head, a moles, a 5 o'clock shadow, and
Mm,
he looks absolutely fantastic. And I did that
yeah.
during the class that I did with Gorilla. Can't find it
Yeah,
right now,
I
but
have seen some of his stuff actually. He knows what he's doing. Something. He's got those skin tones down.
I've got
Um,
one of his.
there you go. There you go. Nice.
So
Yeah, yeah.
that's one of his.
But, but he
I don't normally touch that without gloves.
sorry. But yeah, it's interesting. But again, going back to other companies as well, obviously you don't get GW doing busts. Maybe not quite yet. They probably will at one point.
I think they do on
I
Forge
think
World.
I think I think they did in the past, didn't they? I don't know if
Yeah.
they still do. But yeah, it expands your horizons in terms of companies as well, because there's a lot of, once you get into that sort of side of what you would call miniature painting companies, there's all sorts of tiny little one-man startups that have sculpted themselves and are getting it cast by somebody else. Yeah, it's not my area of expertise, but I certainly enjoy looking at all the websites and bits and
Yeah,
bobs.
yeah. There's some fantastic buffs out there. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, and finally, I say you've been in the hobby for a long time. What advice would you have for someone who's wanting to get into miniature painting or wargaming?
Um, my my number one with miniature painting, and this is a lot easier said than done, but then again, what isn't, is, and you hear this quite a lot as well, to be fair, so I'm not going to say it's a cop out, but I do genuinely believe it, is whatever you paint, do not compare it to anything you see on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Compare it to the last thing that you painted, and that is it.
Yeah.
Like, like you can be inspired by stuff. You can look at somebody's paint job of, um, I don't know, whatever it be, Reaver Titan, and go, I want to try and do that. But depending on where you are on level, you may not know how to do it. You may not have the experience. Compare it to whatever you came out with last, and see and chart your own growth. That's my number one. Like, don't ever look at the heavy metal team and say, well, my job isn't painted right because it isn't painted like an heavy metal model.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever look at the box art on whatever company you bought from and say, well, I didn't get this bit right, and beat yourself up about it. Paint it how you want to paint it. You don't have to stick to any color schemes. You don't have to stick to anything. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it and compare what you did to what you did before, and you will go, hang on a minute, last time I couldn't get those eye sockets right, but this time I have. Or, oh, that reflection's just right this time, or that highlight's in the right place and it wasn't on the last one. And then you will get into it, and then you'll grow. That's my advice anyway.
Excellent advice. Well, thank you ever so much for giving up your time and speaking to us.
No problem.
And thank you once again. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, cheers, Andy. Thank you very much.